Security, we have a vagrant situation in the lobby. Remove this woman immediately before she disturbs our real guests. Lydia Carmichael's command cut through the marble air of the Grand Meridian. Security, remove her. Heads turned toward the woman she pointed at, a tall figure in a charcoal suit whose calm made the accusations feel absurd. Amara Ellison didn't flinch. She clutched a black leather portfolio to her chest, its edges pressed flat against immaculate fabric, the single detail betraying control instead of fear. Guests gathered in a slow half-circle, silk scarves, tennis whites, watches that caught the chandelier's light. Phones lifted. A moment of living theater was underway, and Lydia played to her audience with polished disdain. "She's disturbing our real guests," she said, smiling for the lenses. Applause rose like nervous laughter. Two guards appeared. Darius Holt, broad-shouldered, Caleb Mercer a step behind. Their hands rested close to the metal on their belts. The crowd leaned forward for the confrontation they wanted. Amara spoke once, steady. "Before you act, verify my appointment." Her words landed softly, yet no one moved. A cough, a camera click, the faint hum of air conditioning, all merged into judgment. Naomi Park's live stream counter climbed past 200. A caption appeared beneath the video. "Black woman blocked from hotel lobby." In the glass wall behind them, the city glimmered, indifferent, glittering. Amara glanced at her watch. 10 minutes, she murmured. No one asked 10 minutes to what? Lydia folded her arms, victorious in ignorance. The circle tightened. The recording lights burned brighter, and somewhere inside that quiet woman's composure, a storm waited for its cue. The crowd around the marble lobby thickened, forming a semicircle as if the confrontation itself were an unscheduled performance. Some guests leaned forward with the hungry posture of people who wanted scandal to feed their timelines. Others kept their distance but still raised their phones, knowing that anything recorded here could go viral by dinner. Amara Johnson stood at the center of it all, still motionless, still holding her black leather portfolio across her chest. The case looked less like an accessory and more like a shield. Every eye in the room followed it, the way a pack of animals follows the faint glint of a hidden weapon. The crowd expected her to flinch, to defend herself with excuses or protests. Instead, she did nothing, an act of refusal that unsettled even those who despised her. Stephanie Miller mistook the silence for weakness. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, turning to her improvised audience, "you are witnessing what happens when appearances deceive. Designer knockoffs, loud voices, entitlement, it's always the same story. They think if they walk in here like they belong, we'll let them stay." Her words dripped with venom masquerading as principle. No one laughed, but phones kept recording. The glowing screens multiplied, a constellation of judgment and curiosity. Stephanie's voice reverberated through the lobby, bouncing off the chandeliers and gilded columns. Amara's gaze, however, never wavered. Her dark eyes remained fixed on Stephanie, dissecting her like a case study in arrogance. She did not blink, did not look away, did not let her opponent out of her sights. In that silence, the audience shifted uneasily. A few whispered to one another, voices low but microphones on their phones, catching everything. "Why doesn't she say something? Why is she so calm? Is this staged?" Amara lowered her eyes just for a moment to her Cartier watch. 9 minutes now. Her lips did not move, but her posture seemed to murmur a single idea. Time is on my side. The tension grew thick, like the charged air before a storm. Stephanie gestured again toward the service entrance. "The help belongs through the back. She knows it. We all know it. Security." Still, Amara did not move. She pressed the portfolio closer to her chest, like a gate holding back something no one else could yet see. From behind the marble columns, two figures emerged, security in tailored black uniforms that strained slightly at the shoulders. Lopez, tall and broad-necked, walked with a swagger that spoke of years of unquestioned authority. Harris, shorter, more deliberate, scanned the room with eyes that betrayed unease even before the first words were spoken. Both men rested their hands lightly against the holsters at their hips, not drawing weapons, but reminding everyone they were armed. Lopez pressed his radio to his mouth, his voice steady, official. "Code yellow in the main lobby. Possible trespasser. standing by for escalation. The words echoed through the radio static, confirming to everyone present that this moment was now classified, documented, logged. Stephanie Miller smiled as though reinforcements were applause. She gestured again, her manicured hand slicing the air toward the service exit. Escort her out. The staff entrance is that way. That's the only door for people like her. The crowd murmured in approval, feeding on the spectacle. Guests in tailored suits nodded gravely, as if upholding the hotel's standards justified the humiliation unfolding before them. Phones rose higher. Red recording dots flickered in the dimmed light like thousands of tiny, hungry eyes. Through it all, Amara Johnson stood rooted. Her expression did not shift. She seemed to have calculated the angle of every camera, the placement of every guard, the timing of every breath. Instead of retreating, she raised her wrist again. The platinum Cartier watch flashed under the chandelier, a cold beam of light cutting the tension. 8 minutes until my appointment upstairs, she said softly, almost conversationally, yet loud enough for every microphone in the room to catch. Her words collided with Lopez's authority. He frowned, taking one step closer, his hand heavy against the taser on his belt. Harris, still lingering a pace behind, tilted his head, studying Amara's composure. She was too calm, too deliberate. His instincts whispered warnings, but the crowd's approval and Stephanie's smirk pushed him into silence. Stephanie laughed sharply, playing to her audience. Appointment? The only appointment you have is with the sidewalk outside. But the cameras were still rolling, the audience still growing, and the countdown on Amara's watch continued. Lopez adjusted his stance, boots planted firmly against the marble as if preparing to herd someone uncooperative. His partner Harris shifted uneasily, fingers brushing his radio, but not speaking into it. The lobby air had thickened, every sound amplified. The clink of glasses at the bar, the shuffle of shoes on stone, the faint hum of phones recording from every angle. Stephanie Miller relished the tension. She pivoted toward the semicircle of guests, arms spread wide like a conductor orchestrating applause. Ladies and gentlemen, observe what happens when people believe appearances can buy access. She doesn't belong here. Standards matter. Her voice dripped with disdain and performance, and for a moment, several guests nodded approvingly. Amara Johnson stood utterly still, portfolio pressed against her chest, her gaze never leaving Stephanie's face. She looked more like a judge than the accused. The watch on her wrist ticked softly. 8 minutes had become 7. Lopez's hand pressed firmly against his taser now, the silent warning of force ready to be used. He leaned in. Ma'am, this can go one of two ways. Walk out voluntarily, or we escort you out. Your choice. Amara finally spoke, her voice calm enough to make even the air hesitate. I understand your confusion, but I suggest you verify my appointment before taking irreversible action. The phrase hung in the air. Irreversible action. Harris blinked, recognizing the weight of those words. But Stephanie scoffed, turning back to her impromptu audience. Irreversible? Honey, the only thing irreversible here is the damage to this hotel's reputation if we allow random people to wander through our lobby unchecked. A ripple of chuckles spread across the onlookers, but not all were laughing. A young man lowered his phone slightly, whispering, She's way too calm. Something's off. Emily Nguyen's livestream picked it up, her voice narrating over the growing viewer count. She's asking them to check her appointment, but they won't listen. This is getting uncomfortable. The numbers surged on Emily's screen, 3,000, then 4. Comments scrolled fast, angry, incredulous. Call the news. This is blatant racism. Hotel name. Post it everywhere. But in the marble lobby of the Imperial West, Stephanie Miller heard only her own confidence. She waved a hand toward the service exit, smiling for the cameras. Security, please proceed. And the second hand on Amara's Cartier watch swept towards 6 minutes. The Imperial West lobby had become a theater, and every guest was both actor and audience. Stephanie Miller straightened her blazer, playing the role of righteous guardian of luxury, while Lopez and Harris closed in on Amara Johnson with calculated steps. Phones rose higher, catching every angle, their red lights blinking like a constellation of silent witnesses. Near the concierge desk, Emily Nguyen raised her phone above the heads of taller guests. live streaming with the urgency of a journalist breaking news. Her voice trembled but carried clearly into the microphone. This is insane. The hotel manager is literally throwing out a black businesswoman for no reason. Her words cut through the noise, beamed directly to the growing audience on TikTok Live. The viewer count ticked like a slot machine. 847, 1,230, 2,147. Comments flooded in so quickly that Emily struggled to keep up. This is racism in real time. Call CNN. What's the hotel's name? This lady is way too calm. It's suspicious. Stephanie noticed the phones and pivoted to perform for them. Her voice became more exaggerated, her gestures sharper. Ladies and gentlemen, witness what happens when certain people think designer knockoffs grant them access to establishments like ours. We maintain standards here. Her words were meant to sting, and they did. A silver-haired guest in tennis whites clapped politely, murmuring, "Good for you, dear. Standards matter." The remark rippled through the crowd, reinforcing the illusion that exclusion equaled professionalism. But the live stream told another story. Emily's voice narrated steadily as her camera captured Amara's stillness, her refusal to be rattled. "Look at her. She's not yelling, not resisting. She just asked them to verify something. Why won't they listen?" Back at the bar, blogger David Foster typed furiously on his tablet, the headline already forming, "Discrimination in Real Time, Imperial West's Shameful Display." His post began circulating in hospitality forums within minutes. Notifications pinged on his screen as industry insiders shared it with disbelief. Amara said nothing. She simply adjusted her grip on the portfolio, tucking a flash of platinum plastic, a key card, back inside before anyone else could register it. The motion was small, almost invisible, but not lost on the cameras. The watch on her wrist gleamed once more. 6 minutes remained, and outside the walls of the hotel, the online storm was only beginning. The marble lobby hummed with a strange electricity. Phones hovered like moths around flame, each lens capturing a story that would soon escape the hotel's control. Stephanie Miller basked in it, shoulders squared, chin lifted. She believed herself the heroine of this drama, the steadfast gatekeeper protecting her domain from intrusion. Her audience seemed to reward the performance. A silver-haired man in a crisp tennis outfit leaned on his racket, his phone angled in one hand. "Good for you," he called out in his gravelly baritone. "Standards matter." His words landed with the sharpness of endorsement, drawing a smattering of nods from others who mistook arrogance for professionalism. Across the semicircle, a woman wrapped in diamonds murmured to her companion, "This is why we stay here. They don't let just anyone through." Her phone, too, was recording, feeding the narrative that exclusion equaled excellence. Amara Johnson heard every word, but her posture remained unshaken. The portfolio in her hands shifted slightly, a whisper of motion that revealed a sliver of platinum plastic, a key card edged with a magnetic strip. Before any eye could linger too long, she slid it deeper into the leather case, tucking it away like a secret not yet meant to be revealed. Her phone buzzed in the pocket of her blazer. The screen lit up briefly. "Legal team ready. Acquisition announcement in place. Boardroom prepared." Amara did not reach for it, but the glow caught Stephanie's attention. "Probably her parole officer checking in," Stephanie sneered, loud enough for the crowd to hear. A few chuckles followed, brittle and uneasy. Cameras recorded the moment in full. The venom thinly veiled his jest. Harris's eyes flicked toward the buzzing phone, then back to Amara. Something in his gut twisted. This woman did not move like someone trespassing. She moved like someone waiting. Emily Nguyen's live stream continued to climb. 2,800 viewers now, she whispered into her mic. They just mocked her, said something about parole. She hasn't raised her voice once. She's just waiting. Amara raised her wrist once again, the Cartier's platinum face reflecting a sharp glint of chandelier light. 5 minutes, she said softly. The words sliced through the air. Some laughed, dismissing her calm as delusion. Others fell silent, unsettled by the confidence radiating from a woman everyone else was so desperate to dismiss. And the countdown continued. The sharp chime of the executive elevator sliced through the tension. Heads turned as the polished steel doors opened, and out stepped Richard Thompson, the general manager of the Imperial West. 15 years of running luxury properties had sculpted him into a man of rehearsed authority. His silver hair was perfectly combed, his navy suit pressed into crisp lines. Even the way he adjusted his cufflinks felt like a declaration of command. "What's the situation here?" His voice carried like a judge entering a courtroom. The crowd parted slightly, giving him center stage. Stephanie Miller brightened, relief and triumph flooding her expression. Reinforcements had arrived. "Richard, thank God," she said loudly, performing for the lenses still pointed in their direction. "This woman refuses to leave. I explained she doesn't belong here. She's been disrupting our lobby for 10 minutes. Richard studied Amara Johnson with the same detached precision he'd use on a misplaced chair in the lounge. An irritation to be corrected, not a person to be understood. His gaze flicked over her charcoal suit, her leather portfolio, the glint of her Cartier watch. Expensive, yes, but in his mind, wealth could be borrowed, faked, or staged. Her composure, he assumed, was nothing more than defiance. "I'm Richard Thompson, general manager," he announced, making sure his title landed as a weapon. "Ma'am, this is a private establishment. We maintain certain standards. You may be confused, but your presence here is unauthorized." The words washed over Amara without effect. She stood as still as marble, eyes calm, voice low but precise. "7 minutes remaining." Richard frowned, irritated by her cryptic defiance. 7 minutes until what? "Whatever appointment you think you have doesn't exist in my hotel." He turned to Lopez. "Make sure she understands that." Lopez nodded, stepping closer, his hand now openly resting on his taser grip. Harris hesitated, watching Amara too closely to ignore her stillness. She didn't carry herself like a trespasser cornered in luxury. She carried herself like someone measuring the countdown to inevitability. Phones zoomed in on Richard, on Stephanie, on Amara. Emily Nguyen's live stream passed 12,000 viewers. Her voice trembled as she whispered into her mic, "Now the general manager is here. He's saying she doesn't belong. But why is she still so calm?" The Cartier watch ticked. The countdown did not stop. Richard Thompson's frown hardened into something sterner, something meant to reassure the guests who were nodding at him from the sidelines. "We're done here," he declared, his voice sharpened for the benefit of the phones recording every second. "Security, call Chicago police. We'll have this trespassing situation dealt with officially." Lopez pressed his radio again, his tone clipped and professional. "Dispatch, this is Imperial West. Code yellow escalating. Requesting CPD assistance. Possible trespassing. Media presence confirmed." His words crackled through the static, the formal language transforming Amara Johnson from human being into subject, into situation. The guest murmured, emboldened by Richard's stance. A businessman in a pinstripe suit straightened his tie and muttered to no one in particular. Finally, someone with backbone. "Standards must be protected." A woman with a string of diamonds draped around her neck nodded in visible approval, speaking just loud enough for microphones to catch. "This is why we pay premium rates. They don't let standards slip." Phones captured it all, every approving word, every dismissive nod. Emily Nguyen's live stream viewership ticked upward. 15,000, 17,000, 19,000. Comments scrolled in rapid fire. She asked for them to verify her appointment. "Why won't they listen? This is racist. Straight up. Call the news stations. Don't just record, tag everyone." Through the growing noise, Amara's voice surfaced. Low, steady, cutting. 4 minutes. Richard turned sharply toward her. 4 minutes until what? His tone dripped with disdain, a man used to ending conversations with a single command. Amara didn't flinch. Her eyes held his, unblinking. 4 minutes until this situation resolves itself. The line made Harris hesitate. He shifted slightly, his body language no longer aligned with Lopez's aggression. Something about her composure didn't match the profile of a trespasser, nor of a scammer. He dealt with both in his 12 years of security work. This was different, but Richard didn't notice the hesitation. He was playing to his audience, his confidence swelling as he mistook support from pearl-clutching guests as validation of truth. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, raising his hands as though delivering a lecture, "you're witnessing responsible hospitality management. We cannot compromise security, not for noise, not for theater. Applause rippled from one corner of the semicircle. Emily's camera caught every clap, every approving smile. But the comments beneath her stream told another story. Why does she look like she knows something? She's not scared. She's waiting. Plot twist incoming. And still, the Cartier watch ticked. 3 minutes. The marble lobby pulsed with tension, but outside its gilded doors, the digital storm was already roaring. Emily Nguyen's livestream had crossed 22,000 viewers, her shaky narration blending with a flood of comments that seemed to have a life of their own. Imperial West racism began trending across Chicago within minutes. Screenshots of Amara Johnson's calm, statuesque posture contrasted against Stephanie Miller's theatrical sneer and Richard Thompson's rigid stance. Twitter feeds filled with captions. This is what discrimination looks like in 2025. She's not even resisting. They're humiliating her for sport, but the counter-narrative rose just as quickly. A hospitality consultant retweeted the livestream with his own caption. Hotels have security protocols for a reason. If she had an appointment, she'd show proof. On Facebook, a viral post asked bluntly, why won't she just show ID? Probably another staged discrimination stunt. Within minutes, and Protect Hospitality standards started trending in opposition. Inside the lobby, Amara said nothing. She stood silent, portfolio pressed to her chest, watching her antagonist without breaking eye contact. That silence unsettled the smarter observers. Harris, shifting uncomfortably by the elevator bank, glanced from Amara to Richard, then back again. Something about her stillness gnawed at him. He had restrained trespassers before. None of them had looked like this. Too calm, too calculating, too certain of outcome. Richard mistook the growing noise outside as proof of his own authority. He squared his shoulders, projecting confidence into the cameras. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot allow disruptions to dictate policy. Standards keep establishments like this safe and secure. She does not belong here. His voice rang with finality, but the digital audience heard arrogance. Emily whispered into her mic, her voice cracking under the weight of what she was witnessing. She's not fighting them. She's literally asking for verification, and they're ignoring her. I've never seen someone so calm while surrounded like this. Her viewer count ticked upward again. 25,000, 28,000, 31,000. Comments blurred across the screen faster than she could read them. Get a lawyer involved now. Somebody call the NRACP. This hotel is finished. Amara glanced at her watch, the Cartier face catching another shard of chandelier light. 3 minutes, she murmured. The words slid under the surface like a stone dropped in water. Some in the crowd laughed nervously, others shifted their weight uneasily. The polarization wasn't just online anymore. It was seeping into the marble hall, drawing a fault line straight through the watching guests, and the clock kept ticking. The hum of the lobby was pierced by a faint wail outside, distant but growing louder. Sirens. Chicago police were on their way. Guests traded glances, some smiling with satisfaction, others raising their phones higher, hungry for the climax of a story they didn't yet understand. Richard Thompson's confidence swelled at the sound. He spread his arms as though presenting evidence of his foresight. You hear that? He said loudly, ensuring the cameras caught every syllable. Law enforcement is on the way. This disruption ends now. His voice carried like a victory speech, rehearsed for an audience of shareholders, not strangers in the lobby. Stephanie Miller smirked beside him, emboldened by his authority. Sweetheart, she said to Amara Johnson, her tone saccharine with contempt. Whatever Groupon deal you thought you had, whatever complaint you're planning to file, it won't work here. The police will make sure of that. The crowd chuckled, nodding. A man in a golf shirt lifted his phone higher, speaking into his own live stream. This is how professionals handle entitled behavior. No compromises. His audience applauded in chat with digital emojis, reinforcing his smug certainty. But Emily Nguyen's livestream painted another picture. Her voice shook as she whispered to her swelling audience of nearly 35,000. She's not resisting. She's just standing there. They keep mocking her, but she's calm. Look at her face. She's not scared. She's waiting. Amara remained a statue in charcoal fabric, her leather portfolio pressed like armor against her chest. She watched Richard with steady eyes, unblinking. Then finally she spoke, her voice soft yet sharp enough to cut the air. "One final opportunity," she said, her tone carrying across the marble lobby. "Are you certain you want to proceed with this course of action?" The words stilled the room. Even Harris hesitated, shifting uneasily, his instincts tugging at him to pause, to ask questions, to verify. But Richard only laughed, puffing up for the cameras. "Absolutely certain," he sneered. "People like you need to learn that there are consequences when you think expensive clothes grant you access to places with standards." The phrase "people like you" echoed against the marble walls like a gunshot. Phones captured it. Streams replayed it. Comment sections exploded. There it is. The racism, raw. He said it. He actually said it. Plot twist is coming. Amara's watch ticked again. 2 minutes. The air inside the Imperial West lobby grew heavy. The kind of silence that comes right before lightning splits the sky. Phones hovered higher, their lenses trained on Amara Johnson as if instinctively aware that something irreversible was about to unfold. Amara inhaled slowly, then stepped forward with unhurried grace, the click of her heels echoing across the marble floor. She reached the reception desk, her movements precise, deliberate, like a surgeon preparing for an incision. The portfolio never left her hands until she placed it flat on the counter. The sound was soft, but it reverberated through the room like a gavel striking. She looked directly at Richard Thompson. Her gaze was calm, surgical, unshaken. "Time's up," she said. 2 words, no more, but they landed like a verdict. Richard laughed for the crowd, the confident sneer of a man sure of his victory. "What is this? Fake business cards? Forged reservations? We've seen every scam in the book." His voice carried arrogance, but his eyes flickered, betraying a sliver of unease. Stephanie Miller smirked and leaned toward the cameras, eager to frame the scene. "This should be entertaining." The crowd pressed closer, the circle tightening, phones recording from every angle. Emily Nguyen's livestream audience surged past 40,000. Her breathless narration trembled. "She's opening the portfolio. I don't know what's inside, but she looks certain." Comments streamed in. "This is it. She's about to flip everything. Please let her have receipts. I've got chills." Amara unlatched the portfolio with slow precision. Her fingers, steady as steel, drew out a single document on cream-colored paper, embossed with multiple seals and signatures. She placed it face down on the desk first, letting suspense stretch across the marble air. Then, with the grace of inevitability, she flipped it over. Richard's eyes landed on the bold header, "Johnson Hospitality Group, Controlling Interest Acquisition." The words leapt off the page like fire. Beneath them, the text confirmed what his smirk could no longer hide. As of 9 a.m. that morning, Johnson Hospitality Group owns 71% of Imperial West Hotels International. The color drained from his face. Stephanie leaned closer, reading aloud before her brain caught up. Effective September 11th, 2025. 71% controlling. Her words choked in her throat. The lobby gasped as one. Emily's live stream exploded with comments. "She owns the hotel. She literally owns the hotel they're throwing her out of. Legendary." And still, Amara's eyes never left Richard's. Richard Thompson's confident smirk collapsed into slack disbelief. His lips moved, but no words came out. The document in front of him, heavy with seals and signatures, mocked every assumption he had made in the last 15 minutes. Stephanie Miller leaned closer, her manicured finger trembling as she traced the embossed lettering. "Johnson Hospitality Group, 71% controlling interest. Imperial West Hotels International." Her voice cracked mid-sentence, the words dying before they could finish. Lopez reached out instinctively, catching the page as it fluttered when Stephanie dropped it. His eyes scanned the legal jargon with the precision of a man who had seen dozens of phony IDs but never something so official. He caught the watermarks, the corporate seals, the layers of notarization. His grip on the taser at his belt loosened. "Sir, this looks real." Richard's jaw tightened, his face pale. "It can't be," he whispered, the cameras catching every syllable. "I would have been notified. The board would have told me." Amara Johnson's voice slid into the silence, calm and unshakable. The notification meeting is at 3 p.m. today. Penthouse boardroom, the very appointment I mentioned repeatedly. From her portfolio, she withdrew another paper. A board meeting agenda printed on elegant stationery, the Imperial West seal gleaming at the top. She placed it neatly on the counter beside the acquisition document. Phones zoomed in on the proof. Emily Nguyen gasped audibly, her live stream comments cascading into chaos. She had an appointment the whole time. Boardroom at 3 p.m. They called the police on their own boss. Richard staggered back a step, his authority crumbling. His hand rose to his forehead as if trying to shield himself from the truth staring back at him. Stephanie, desperate, clung to denial. "This is some elaborate hoax," she snapped. "Derek!" She caught herself, voice cracking. "Richard, tell her she's lying." But Richard couldn't. His eyes were locked on the signatures of the board members, the corporate seals he had seen dozens of times before, the formatting he knew too well to mistake. The circle of guests, once cheering for exclusion, now shifted, their murmurs turning sharp with doubt. The tide was beginning to turn, and Amara still hadn't raised her voice. The marble lobby had gone silent, the kind of silence that exposes every nervous breath, every rustle of clothing. Stephanie Miller's face twisted with disbelief, but Richard Thompson looked worse. Ashen, his authority collapsing beneath the weight of signatures and seals he could no longer deny. Amara Johnson did not let the silence linger. She reached once more into her portfolio and pulled out a thicker file, its edges bound in legal blue. The snap of the folder opening echoed louder than Richard's voice had minutes before. "You've been here 15 years, Mr. Thompson," she said, her voice even, clinical. "And in those 15 years, patterns repeat." She lifted a page, her gaze cutting into him. "Sexual harassment settlement, 2018, buried by corporate." Another page turned. "Discrimination complaint, 2020, hushed and filed away." Her hand shifted to the lobby around her, the semicircle of guests now silent witnesses. "And today, documented bias, performed for an audience of tens of thousands." Richard's face drained of all color. That's confidential," he stammered. "Not anymore," Amara replied coldly. She gestured toward the glowing screens, dozens of phones capturing his unraveling. "Confidentiality dies when misconduct is performed for the world to see." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some guests instinctively stepped back from Richard, as though his reputation had become contagious. Emily Nguyen's livestream comment feed exploded. "She has receipts. This guy's finished. Expose it all." Lopez shifted uncomfortably, his taser hand now firmly at his side. Harris leaned over his shoulder, scanning the documents with a practiced eye. "These look authentic," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Richard lunged forward, voice cracking with desperation. "This is entrapment, a setup. You planned all of this?" Amara didn't flinch. She slid another page across the counter, the ink still smelling faintly of toner. "Plan to attend my own board meeting? Plan to walk into my own hotel?" "No, Mr. Thompson. The only plan here was yours, to humiliate someone you deemed unworthy." Stephanie's lips parted, but no sound came. For the first time since the confrontation began, her confidence faltered. Emily's voice, carried by 50,000 live viewers, whispered the truth no one in the room could deny. She knew everything, and they just proved her point. The walls of Imperial West were no longer echoing with management's authority. They were echoing with collapse. The ding of the executive elevator split the silence, sharp and deliberate. All heads turned as the brushed steel doors opened. Out stepped Catherine Lewis, a senior board member of Imperial West Hotels, her posture radiating authority. Her navy skirt suit was crisp, her pearl necklace glimmering in the chandelier light. Unlike the guests clustered with their phones, she wasn't here to spectate. She was here on business. "Ms. Johnson," Catherine said warmly, her tone reverent and apologetic all at once. "We've been waiting for you upstairs. When you didn't arrive, the board grew concerned." The words detonated through the lobby. Gasps rippled outward, followed by the frantic tapping of screens as guests updated captions. "Board member confirms it. She's the owner. This is real." Richard Thompson nearly collapsed where he stood. His mouth opened, but only air came out. His carefully constructed facade of authority cracked completely. Stephanie Miller looked between him and Catherine, desperate for someone to contradict what had just been spoken. No one did. Amara Johnson inclined her head slightly, her calm unbroken. She didn't need to raise her voice. "Catherine," she said evenly, "please meet your soon-to-be former general manager, Richard Thompson, and your former front-of-house manager, Stephanie Miller." Phones swung toward Richard and Stephanie like spotlights. The semicircle of onlookers widened, the crowd instinctively recoiling from the crumbling pillars of authority. Murmurs of disbelief filled the air, shock that the two people who had just strutted as enforcers of standards were being stripped in real time of their titles, their dignity, their futures. Emily Nguyen's live-stream chat exploded. "Former manager? She just fired them live. This is the moment." The viewer count soared past 65,000. Stephanie tried to salvage the wreckage, her voice high and brittle. "This is insane. Even if she owns part of the hotel, we were following security protocol. We couldn't have known." "You had every opportunity to verify my appointment," Amara interrupted, her words cold as steel. "Instead, you chose humiliation as your first response." Lopez and Harris exchanged glances, the realization dawning that the woman they had nearly restrained was not only a legitimate guest, she was the boss. The weight of what they'd almost done pressed visibly on their faces. Catherine Lewis's gaze hardened as she turned toward Richard. "Tell me this isn't what it looks like." But Richard couldn't speak. The marble silence around him screamed louder than words ever could. The Imperial West lobby held its breath as Amara Johnson gathered her documents, sliding each one back into the leather portfolio with deliberate precision. The pages whispered against each other, final and undeniable, before the clasp snapped shut. That sound alone was louder than the murmur of 100 guests. Without waiting for permission, without so much as a glance at Richard Thompson or Stephanie Miller, Amara turned and walked toward the bank of elevators reserved for executives. Her steps were steady, unhurried. The semicircle of onlookers instinctively parted, the same crowd that had moments earlier pressed forward with phones raised now drawing back, as though she radiated heat. Emily Nguyen's livestream caught the motion, her camera following every step. "She's walking to the elevator," she whispered breathlessly to her 70,000 viewers. "They tried to throw her out, and now she's walking into her own building like she owns it. Because she does." Comments erupted in a torrent. "Iconic. This is history." She turned humiliation into coronation. Lopez lowered his gaze, the weight of shame settling heavy on his broad shoulders. Harris shifted beside him, silently exhaling relief that no irreversible mistake had been made. Both men stood rooted, unable to move, their authority stripped as easily as the titles about to be pulled from their bosses. Richard tried to speak, but no words came. His lips parted, trembling, but the cameras caught only the silence of a man undone. Stephanie, pale and rigid, stared at the polished floor, as if she could vanish into the marble itself. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, the brushed steel gleaming under the chandelier light. Amara stepped inside, turning just once to face the crowd. Her expression was unreadable, her voice calm but resonant. "The board meeting will proceed as scheduled," she said, each syllable etched into the marble walls. "New management begins now." The doors closed with a quiet finality, sealing her assent. The lobby erupted behind her, not with applause, not with protest, but with the frenzied hum of nearly 100 phones uploading what they had just witnessed. For the world outside, the story had already transformed. For the people left in that lobby, it was the moment they realized they had not been part of a spectacle. They had been part of a reckoning. The penthouse boardroom of the Imperial West was a different world from the chaos below. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Chicago's skyline, a mahogany table polished to a mirror finish, and 7 board members seated stiffly, their tablets and notes spread before them. The room smelled of leather chairs and tension. When the elevator doors slid open, all eyes shifted to Amara Johnson. She entered flanked by her legal counsel, Anthony Ramirez, portfolio tucked neatly beneath her arm. She moved with the unhurried authority of someone who had already won. Catherine Lewis, still unsettled from what she'd witnessed in the lobby, gestured toward the head chair at the table. "Ms. Johnson," she said formally, "this is your seat now." Amara placed her portfolio on the table and sat, her gaze sweeping over the assembled faces. "Before we begin the acquisition agenda," she said, voice low but resonant, "we must address the liability incident that just occurred downstairs." Anthony Ramirez opened his briefcase and slid documents across the table, each page marked with legal headers and graphs. "In the past 30 minutes," he reported clinically, "Imperial West's stock price has dropped 4.7%, erasing approximately $42 million in market value." The number hung in the air like a thunderclap. A murmur of disbelief rippled around the table. Anthony continued unshaken. "Social media reach, 2.3 million impressions and climbing. Sentiment analysis, 87% negative. Multiple live streams recorded the entire incident, with one peaking at nearly 70,000 viewers in real time. Federal civil rights violations under Section 1981 are likely. Conservative estimate of exposure, 5 to 10 million in damages, excluding potential class action." Robert Hayes, a board member with 12 years of service, rubbed his forehead with a trembling hand. "This, all from a lobby confrontation?" "No," Amara corrected, her tone sharp but measured. "This from years of neglect, of culture left unexamined, of leadership that believed humiliation was easier than verification. Today, it was simply caught." Silence gripped the room. The weight of numbers, the stock drop, the lawsuits, the millions evaporating, left no space for denial. For the first time since Amara entered, the board understood they weren't just facing a scandal. They were staring at survival. The boardroom was silent except for the faint hum of the city beyond the glass. The numbers Anthony Ramirez had laid down, millions in evaporated value, lawsuits looming, had already shaken the table. But Amara Johnson leaned forward now, portfolio open again, and the air shifted. "Financial loss is a symptom," she said evenly, her voice carrying to each corner of the mahogany room. "The disease is culture, and culture is corrected only through systemic reform." She slid a stack of papers across the table. The title page read in bold, "Hospitality First Protocol." Catherine Lewis adjusted her glasses, scanning the first page as Amara continued. "This protocol requires that every guest interaction begins with the assumption of legitimacy. No exceptions. Concerns must be verified through established procedures before exclusionary action is taken. No more assumptions. No more profiling." The board members flipped through the documents, the soft shuffle of paper filling the tense silence. "Every Imperial West property," Amara continued, "will undergo comprehensive bias audits within 90 days. Independent firms, not internal managers, will conduct them. Any pattern of discrimination will be corrected immediately, with full public disclosure." Robert Hayes shifted uncomfortably, calculating costs. "What's the expense of implementing such reforms across all properties?" $400,000 annually, Amara replied without hesitation. "Less than a single discrimination settlement, less than half the loss from today's stock dip alone." Her legal counsel added, "Staff will complete accredited bias awareness certification within 60 days. Failure means termination. Guest complaint systems will bypass local management and report directly to corporate compliance." The numbers were undeniable, the logic airtight. Margaret Kim, another board member, leaned forward, her expression thoughtful. "And the timeline for rollout?" Amara's eyes hardened. "Immediate. Terminations today. Training begins this week. Public announcement by 5 o'clock. The room stilled again. It was not a proposal, it was a command. Amara leaned back, her gaze sweeping across the table of shaken executives. "We have a choice: to lead the industry into a new era of hospitality, or to collapse under the weight of lawsuits and public shame. Which shall it be?" The silence that followed was not uncertainty. It was the sound of inevitability. For a long moment, the boardroom sat in weighted silence, the kind that clings to the walls and forces every man and woman present to confront themselves. Papers lay open in front of them, exposés of bias audits, new compliance structures, timelines written in bold. Every detail was meticulous, undeniable. Catherine Lewis folded her hands atop the Hospitality First Protocol. "We've just witnessed in real time how quickly negligence can metastasize into a crisis," she said, her voice measured but urgent. The live streams are still climbing. This doesn't just touch one property. This is the entire brand. Robert Hayes adjusted his tie, still trying to mask the sweat at his temples. But public termination, Richard Thompson's career, Stephanie Miller's, won't that create backlash? Amara's gaze cut to him, sharp as glass. Their actions were public. Their consequences must be equally public. Anything less is complicity. If we attempt to hide, we will lose far more than two managers. We will lose credibility. We will lose investors. We will lose every guest who looks like me. Anthony Ramirez reinforced the point with the precision of an attorney reading a verdict. Section 12.4 of the acquisition agreement mandates immediate termination for discriminatory conduct by management personnel. Not optional, mandatory. Failure to act exposes the board itself to liability. Murmurs rose and fell, but no one contradicted him. Amara leaned back in her chair, hands folded calmly on the mahogany surface. The time for hesitation is gone. The time for accountability is now. Cast your votes. Catherine was the first to raise her hand, then Margaret Kim, then Robert Hayes reluctantly, his eyes avoiding Amara's, but his fingers lifting nonetheless. One by one, all 7 hands rose. The motion carries unanimously, Catherine declared, her voice firm. Ms. Johnson, you are authorized to implement immediate and comprehensive reforms. Amara inclined her head once, then reached for her phone. Anthony, notify legal. Richard Thompson and Stephanie Miller are terminated effective immediately. Security will escort them from the premises within the hour. The words landed with the weight of history. Downstairs, the sirens that had once promised Richard's victory would now serve as the soundtrack to his fall. The boardroom doors opened with a hydraulic sigh, and words spread like a shockwave. Staff hurried down the marble corridors, whispers traveling faster than the elevators. Within minutes, the Imperial West lobby was no longer buzzing with curiosity. It was boiling with anticipation. Guests clutched their phones, waiting for the next act in a drama that had already consumed social media. Anthony Ramirez returned to Amara Johnson's side, phone in hand. Termination letters are drafted, signed, and logged, he said briskly. Corporate has been notified. Section 12.4 invoked. Amara gave a single nod. Release the statement at 5 o'clock sharp. No delay, no spin. Every guest and every viewer will see accountability in real time. Stephanie Miller's voice echoed down the hall before her figure appeared. This is a mistake. I was following protocol. Her words cracked with desperation, her heels clicking too fast on marble as she tried to reach the boardroom. Security intercepted her, guiding her firmly but respectfully toward the lobby. Phones rose like weapons as guests recorded her protests. Richard Thompson emerged moments later, his face pale, his confident stride replaced with the shuffling steps of a man carrying the weight of his own undoing. A cardboard box sat in his arms, hastily filled with personal effects, framed certificates, a pen set, loose files. It looked pitifully small compared to the grandeur of the lobby he once ruled. Guests whispered, gasped, some openly jeered. Emily Nguyen's livestream viewer count surged past 90,000. Her voice cracked with awe. They're walking him out. The general manager of the Imperial West. Fired. Right here. Right now. Richard tried to speak, his lips forming excuses, but the words drowned in the tide of camera shutters and commentary. Stephanie trailed behind, her tears streaking through foundation, her protests dissolving into the marble air. Amara stepped from the elevator then, her presence commanding silence. She did not raise her voice. She didn't need to. Today, consequences meet visibility, she said, her calm tone cutting sharper than any shout. This is not a crisis. This is clarity. The press release dropped at that exact moment, hitting inboxes, news alerts, and timelines. Imperial West Hotels acknowledges incident of discrimination. Immediate terminations enacted. Comprehensive reforms underway. In the marble lobby, humiliation had turned into history. By dusk, the lobby of the Imperial West no longer resembled the battlefield it had been hours earlier. The air still held the charge of what had happened, but now it hummed with a different energy. Renewal. Maintenance staff moved quickly, guided by Amara Johnson's communications team. installing sleek new signs at every entrance and corridor. Each placard gleamed with the same message, embossed in gold against black. Every guest belongs here. Verification before exclusion. Dignity always. The words weren't just decor, they were a declaration. Phones immediately captured the installation, uploading images that ricocheted across social media. Hashtags shifted in tone. Imperial West racism began to fade, replaced by "in every guest belongs" and "Russia hospitality first." Emily Nguyen's live stream, still ongoing after nearly 6 hours, panned across the new signage. Her voice, weary but emotional, cracked slightly. "This hotel, it's rewriting itself in real time. I've never seen anything like this." Her audience, now past 100,000, flooded the chat with support. "This is change. This is leadership. I'm booking my next trip here." Lopez and Harris, the two security guards who had once flanked Amara, stood awkwardly near the reception desk. They weren't terminated. Amara's reforms had chosen a harder, more meaningful path. Lopez cleared his throat, his voice carrying across the marble space. "We followed orders," he admitted, his eyes fixed on the live stream cameras. "But following orders doesn't excuse threatening the owner of this hotel. We were wrong." Harris stepped beside him, his voice steadier than his colleagues. "Ms. Johnson gave us grace we didn't deserve. We'll earn back that trust through actions, not words. The training, bias, awareness, certification, we're ready for all of it." Their statements weren't rehearsed, but they landed with impact. Guests clapped softly. The live stream chat exploded. Respect to the guards for owning it. Second chances matter. Accountability looks different here. Above it all, Amara watched from the mezzanine balcony, hands clasped over the railing. The new signs glowed under the chandelier, reflecting in the polished marble floor. For the first time that day, the Imperial West didn't feel like a fortress of exclusion. It felt like a promise. Reporters crowded the lobby by early evening, cameras mounted on shoulders. Boom mics pointed toward every word Amara Johnson spoke. Flash bulbs lit the marble floor like lightning. The public terminations of Richard Thompson and Stephanie Miller had already dominated national headlines. But what came next would become the image replayed for years. As Amara finished answering a volley of sharp questions about legal risk and reform, a small voice rose above the din. "Miss Johnson?" The crowd turned. A young black girl, no older than 10, stepped nervously from behind her mother's legs. She wore a bright yellow dress that stood out against the marble and glass. In her tiny hands, she clutched a phone case decorated with glittering stars, the live stream chat from Emily Nguyen still flickering on its screen. The lobby hushed. The girl's eyes, wide and uncertain, locked on Amara. "Will hotels be safe for people who look like me now?" The words cut through the air sharper than any accusation. Reporters froze, their microphones lowering. Guests leaned in. Emily's live stream caught every second, her audience climbing past 120,000 as comments exploded. "Oh my God, this is the moment. I'm crying." Amara stepped away from the podium, leaving the reporters behind. She crouched down until she was at the child's eye level. Her portfolio, her authority, her corporate armor, all set aside for this single moment. "Sweetheart," she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of both pain and promise. "You belong everywhere your dreams take you. And now the world knows it." The girl's eyes brightened. She nodded, a shy smile tugging at her lips. Her mother covered her mouth with trembling hands, tears slipping free. The cameras flashed again. But this time the image wasn't about humiliation or downfall. It was about hope. A black woman's CEO on her knees in a marble lobby, telling a black child that she belonged. That photo would appear on the front pages of newspapers, on the home screens of millions, on posters in classrooms where young girls wondered if they too could belong. And in that lobby, the promise of a new era was sealed. 6 months after the marble lobby confrontation, the Imperial West Hotel was unrecognizable. What had once been a gilded fortress of exclusion was now a living case study in accountability. Business travelers from across the country checked in with a sense of belonging. Families of color booked suites without hesitation, and conference planners proudly announced their events would be held at a property that set the Chicago standard. Harvard Business School and Cornell's School of Hotel Administration both released case studies titled "The Johnson Protocol: Accountability in Real Time." Students pored over the footage of Amara Johnson's calm defiance, debating the moment when silence turned into strategy, when humiliation transformed into industry reform. Professors held up her leadership as the template for crisis management in the 21st century. The numbers told the story just as clearly. Revenue at the Imperial West had climbed 23%. Corporate bookings were up 31%. Guest satisfaction surveys showed a 40% increase among travelers of color, who cited the new motto, "Every guest belongs here," as more than marketing, but proof of lived experience. 12 other major hotel chains quietly adopted variations of the Hospitality First protocol, requiring verification before exclusion and mandating external bias audits. The American Hotel and Lodging Association endorsed it as the new industry baseline, but within the press it was called by another name, the Chicago Standard. Even government took notice. The Illinois legislature passed the Hotel Accountability Act, modeled directly after Amara's reforms, requiring mandatory reporting and transparency for any discrimination complaints in the hospitality sector. Other states signaled they would follow, and the viral image of Amara kneeling before a young black girl in a yellow dress had become iconic. Posters hung in classrooms, corporate diversity training modules, and advocacy campaigns. The caption that followed it across platforms was simple: "You belong everywhere your dreams take you." Richard Thompson's LinkedIn profile remained frozen, his career finished. Stephanie Miller drifted into obscurity, but Lopez and Harris completed their training, earned certifications, and rose as models of redemption within the company. The world had not just watched a reckoning, it had witnessed the rebirth of an industry. And in Chicago, at the Imperial West, the Standard had a name. The story of Amara Johnson at the Imperial West was not just about one lobby, one manager, or even one hotel chain. It was about the truth we all live with. Prejudice has a cost, but accountability creates change. Have you ever faced discrimination that made you question your worth? Your story matters. Your voice matters. Share your experience in the comments below. Together, we show the world that dignity belongs to everyone, everywhere. And if this story inspired you, subscribe to Black Soul Stories for more tales of resilience, justice, and triumph. Hit the notification bell so you never miss the moments that prove our community's strength is unstoppable. Because change begins when we speak it. And today, you belong.